Alright guys, welcome to EOC Explain. Alright, we're going to go over question 49. If you want to read through that quickly, go ahead and pause and do so. Otherwise, here we go. Alright, the fact that a strain of yeast with a certain defective gene can use the human version of the gene to repair itself is evidence that yeast and humans what? Okay, so let's first do what awesome people do. Let's highlight. So I highlighted a yeast defective gene, so we know that this yeast has a defective gene, and we know that it can use that same gene from a human to repair itself. So in other words, it's kind of like replacing its parts, gene parts, with a human part, and it can use it to repair itself, right? So first off, what does yeast look like? Bam, there's normal looking yeast. That's stuff you usually cook with. There's what it looks like under a microscope, right? So okay, so first off, what are genes? Genes are essentially blueprints, right? So they're the blueprints of, what your body is supposed to do. Usually it's making different proteins and things like that. So let's look at D. It's evidence that yeast and humans, let's look at D, so have identical genomes. Well, if they have identical genomes, they'd essentially be twins, right? But even twins actually don't have the exact same genome, right? Some of them have a few extra, usually one might have a couple of extra copies of genes, but yeah, they're definitely not twins, so we're a little different, so we can go ahead and eliminate D. Alright, let's look at C. So this, because they can share that gene, or yeast can use that gene to repair itself, is evidence that both have eukaryotic cells, right? Well, what's eukaryotic cell? First off, that statement is true, that the yeast and humans both have eukaryotic cells. So that statement is true, but remember, the question is, because it can use human versions of the gene to repair itself, is evidence that what? Well, that's not evidence that they both have eukaryotic cells, because it really doesn't matter. So let's look at different cells. These top two, plant and animal cells, they're both eukaryotic. The bottom one, that's, I believe it's a bacteria cell, and that is prokaryotic, right? Now, they all share the same thing. They all share that they have DNA. So, in that case, it doesn't really matter, because it could use anything's DNA, really. It doesn't have to necessarily be an animal cell, because they all have DNA. It's not like plants and animals have DNA as their coding and bacteria has something else. No, we all use DNA. So, that is not the best answer. So, yeah, they're all connected, right? Okay, let's look at A. They both depend on the same food supply. That's not really relevant, because really it's talking about the genome and how they can share. Yeast can use a piece of our genome to repair itself. So that tells us that our blueprints, maybe the ink that writes our blueprints, the DNA, it's the same. Not that we have the same copies of the DNA, but the style of how we get our codes is the same. That doesn't matter about the food supply. Food supply it's irrelevant. It's like C. It's interesting, yeah, I guess we kind of use the same food supply, sugars, oxygen, but it's irrelevant. So let's knock that one out. So yeah, we share the same genetic code. So it'd be like us writing in the same language. We might have two different stories, but if I have a sentence that I messed up, but you write the same language, well, I can take that same sentence from you and use it in me, because we have the same language, right? So yeast, humans, even bacteria cells, we all have the same language, which is of DNA. So if there's a code that codes for the same thing, hey, they can use it, right? So the answer is B. Hope you guys got that. If you didn't, you got it now. Have an awesome day.